You already know when something about to make a big impact. It's what we used to. Wrestle. Yeah. Welcome to the table. Keep it locked in. Got some talent out this world about to drop in. And the story that we sharing about to shock them. And the level that I'm giving is a top 10. When you hear it's not a show where you get boxed in. Free to be authentic. Ain't nothing off limits. Paint the true picture, not somebody else's false image. Even when you low, it's what somebody else calls winning. Teasy got the table set. Whether it's someone you know that's famous or ain't made it yet. Recognize the power, check the numbers on the data set. Trying to find somebody else that's better, well, let's make a bet. Let's upload this, broke it down, I ain't even break a sweat. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the table. We just get it started, never done, never settle.
What is good, everybody? This is your man, Teasy Jones, Monteasy, whatever you want to call me, man. I'm just happy to be here. I am here on another remote area of my podcast. I'm not in the office right now. I'm actually in another location. But, you know, I love to bring you guys content, bring you guys great episodes, and bring you some of my great friends in all respective forms of entertainment, not only wrestling, music, business, anything. You never know, who can I always pull up here, because I have a lot of great relationships, a lot of people that I know, and a lot of people that has inspired me, and including somebody that has inspired me is my guest here, as I, told him on the Swerve City podcast when we did an episode not too long ago, that this man is one of the reasons why I got into broadcasting, and him being not only a great speaker, but a great communicator and a great host, great facilitator of his talents, and being able to be on radio and not only be a great assist man, as I call him, Magic Johnson man, but to also be a great leader, a great host, bringing some of the wrestling legends onto his podcast and giving them the chance to shine as well. This man is a true legend in the broadcast field. This man is, has the Bus Open show. If you guys want to check that out, please do. If you guys already should know what this man has done for the game and somebody like me and many other people in the broadcasting business, I want to give a shout out to my big brother, Dave LaGreca. What is going on, man? What's going on, legend?
First of all, I love when you call me that. And I appreciate that, that I've inspired you. That means a lot to me because, before I started doing Busted Open, I was actually a broadcasting teacher. So I always put a lot of investment and time into that new generation of broadcasters. And, I love to see people like you just do your thing, and ultra talented people like who, how I feel about you, that you are extremely talented, that you use your gifts the best of your ability. So that means a lot that you say that about me. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, man. It's and a lot of times in this game, man, we gotta sometimes give ourselves roses, because sometimes we don't get them. Some of us do, some of us don't. And naturally you grow not to really care about that. You do that for yourself and in your spirit. But it's always good to show love to somebody that really did inspire you, and it's always good to tell them that, because that's it shows that what the impact that you have and the impact that you're making. And I went to college for 3 years for communications, so I ended up studying and ended up watching a lot of guys as yourself, and just learning the art of broadcasting, how to say things, how to do things. And man, I want to thank you again, and thank you for coming on the show. But before we get into some other stuff about your broadcasting, I want to ask you a question. I'm gonna ask you a fun question here, because I like to switch things up here. Now, you're building a record label, right, from start, and you have to pick a solo artist and a band to start your label. One solo artist and one band. Who are you picking?
Well, you probably nobody would give me the money to fund that, because I'm very old school in my thought process when it comes to music. And,
absolutely.
I actually grew up at a time when you would have actual albums, and you would listen to it from the first song all the way to the last song.
Yeah.
But you asked a really good question, and I'm a big fan of Alice Cooper. I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I would definitely give him. And then on the other flip side of that, I would probably put on my label somebody like Quincy Jones. And here's why. Because Quincy Jones is not just a great producer, but he also has a great eye for talent. So I go back to like Quincy Jones and the Duke album, going back to like 1981, working with James Ingram. So I would actually do Alice Cooper and Quincy Jones. Those would be, now again, these are old school guys. So I don't know who's going to fund a label where I'm taking two people that are over the age of 70. So, you're probably a better person. Like if I'm a record company, I'm giving you the money. I'm not giving me the money. But I'm very old school when it comes to my music. Not that I don't have an ear for new music. Not that I don't appreciate new music. I'm not one of those people that say all new music is bad. But obviously, I'm 51 years old, so I lean a little old school.
Now, listen. Luckily for me, thank God, I grew up with a family that raised me on great music. Like I actually have the Duke album, and I know Karita and the Duke and what's the dude man, that album's incredible. I actually know that
Just Once is one of my all-time favorite songs.
Absolutely. Rest in peace, James Ingram, too, man. An amazing singer, man. Definitely was before his time and his legacy and what he did. And Quincy Jones is one of the greatest producers and arrangers. And you're right, man. One of the, obviously, probably might be the best talent picker to do it. Like he really put together a lot of people and put a lot of people in position, but also rarely ever missed in what he put out. He knew it, like not only Michael Jackson, but the likes of a lot of people he worked with, from Patti LaBelle, George Benson, a lot of people he worked with and gave them the advice, So I think that's a great label. You can't go wrong with Quincy Jones, bro. You can't.
And that's why, like, when you mentioned like a Patti LaBelle, James Ingram, a Michael Jackson, if you look at their greatest hits, their biggest sellers, it's usually with Quincy Jones, as producing. Also, Quincy Jones produced We Are the World and everything else, like some of the biggest singles of all time. But also having, like you just said, the talent of knowing what voice fits what song. Like that takes a special type of person to know that, all right, the feel of this song belongs to this artist over another artist. Like that takes a great ear and a great mind, and he's one of them. And I love Alice Cooper. I'm a big Alice Cooper fan, because not only he's a very underrated writer when it comes to singles, but also extremely theatrical on stage. Maybe some of the best concerts I've ever been to were with him. So again, those are the two I'm going with.
Now, let me ask you this question. Let me switch this up here. Let me ask you this. Now, what is, out of your timeline, being in wrestling and not only being involved in the business, but being a fan as well, being a little bit on both sides of it, what is the one thing you feel like you've truly learned that you did not know coming into it?
Like by doing the show and working with the people that
in that regard, yes.
Yeah, I think when you work with somebody like a Mark Henry and Bully Ray, I'm just using those two examples because that's who I work with on the show today. They just have a great mind of storytelling. And, I probably looked at feuds and matches, but it's really about telling a story. And I guess it's the same thing with when it comes to a great song or a great album. Mm-hmm. Like I was just saying, when I used to buy an album, I would listen to it to the first song all the way to the last song, because that album tells a story. A great song tells a story. Great movie obviously tells a story. And I think it's the same thing with pro wrestling. Like, it's not just about, like in a movie, car crashes or chase scenes or action scenes. It's like you need a foundation of a story. And the one thing I learned over time when it comes to pro wrestling is telling a story. And I'll use the Bloodline storyline that's going on right now in pro wrestling, which I think is the best thing about pro wrestling. It's not about matches. It's not about moves. It's about the story that's being told. And that's probably the biggest thing is storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Once I really started to be around it more and be around the people that actually are in the ring, I actually saw it different. I actually saw it from a more storytelling. And I'm honestly, I'm 35. So I remember I started watching wrestling in 92. So and then I went back and started watching those things. I was like dead like a fan of like the Macho Man, Jake the Snake story, and those stories back in the days. Like I was always a big fan of like the Hogan Warrior dynamic, and that who's going to be the top man, the one guy
Yeah.
who's had it, and the guy who's coming for it. Like I've always been a fan of this just flat out storytelling. Now, don't get me wrong, like the crash action's cool, but I like the storytelling. I miss the old days of like building up. That's one thing I like about AEW, to build up to a pay-per-view. They build it up for a few months to get there. Now, every month is cool, but I remember those days with those guys where WWE used to put those pay-per-views on every couple months, and they built that story. They built it. You couldn't wait to see Macho Man get to Jake the Snake. You couldn't wait.
But and I think like look at like obviously Swerve.
Yeah.
Like Swerve, and I have a lot of respect for him because early on he just wanted to wrestle everywhere in every different type of style, from technical wrestling to deathmatch wrestling. He's one of those guys that's done it all. But I love the story that he had with AEW with Keith Lee. And what are you going to remember more? The movie made in the match, or that character he was playing, or that story with Keith Lee? Like that's it. Again, that's the foundation of everything, is like you said, the buildup of a story until you get into the ring together. I actually feel like AEW doesn't do enough with Swerve. And I don't think they did enough with that story with Swerve and Keith Lee. I was waiting. We saw one chapter, but what about the next chapter? It should be a whole book. But 20 different chapters in one book. Like they only told one chapter. I would have loved for that to have expanded that a little bit more and see different layers to that story between those two.
Agreed, man. I feel that, in a sense, especially in the business in general, man. I just, I wish there was. That's why I love the bloodline story so much, and is because they put a lot of time into it. Now, let me ask you this question. Let me switch this up a second here. So, I ask everybody this question, just see their perspective.
Yeah.
So you're remember those old movie theaters that had the cinema and it had like the billing on the movie up top, kind of like the Apollo Theater, right?
Yep.
So you're walking down the street and you have to choose one. So to your left, obviously you're going to see, to your left is Michael Jackson in his prime in concert. Whatever era you feel is his prime, that's the one you'll go to. And to your right is Prime Ali versus Frazier, and you can only choose one. Where you going?
All right. First of all, the Michael Jackson period be off the wall period, right before you hit with the Thriller.
Agreed.
But I would probably go with Ali and Frazier. I would because, and it's a tough one because you're talking about two of the all-time greats, and you're talking about like special artists, both of them. But I'm going to go with Ali. Ali to me is, and he dabbled in he's pro wrestling. He didn't look at it as just the fight that's going on in the ring. He understood about the story that you got to tell going into the ring, but he also knew how to promote a fight. He knew how to work the microphone. He knew how to work the media. Like, he found like a Howard Cosell and knew that this is the perfect mouthpiece for me to promote myself. Like he was the master of that. Like I think I look at Michael Jackson, and to me, it's Michael Jackson, the guy on stage. I never was really interested in Michael Jackson and what he was doing off the stage. There's only what he was doing on stage and what he was doing on the record. With Muhammad Ali, sometimes the least most important thing is what he was doing in the ring. He knew how to work. He understood how to be a great showman and what it took to be a great showman. And so for me, it's to see Muhammad Ali and Frazier.
That's a great, that's a great reasoning because, at the time, you got to really look at it at the time when you know what you're going to get. And that impact of hearing two grown men punching each other in the ring and just seeing that go on. Those guys would fight 15 rounds, 4 or 5 minute rounds.
And they would let a lot more happen in their fights than what happens in boxing today. Like it's just a different, like you said, it would go to distance, and you just don't see that anymore. Now, when you see a fight go to distance, it's more about they're kind of dancing more than they're actually fighting. You're going back to a time when they did a hell of a lot more fighting. And this is Ali, who I said was the greatest showman. So you could go see Ali fight, and you didn't necessarily have to be a boxing fan. He knew how to put on a show. But you're right about the fight itself. It went the distance. It felt like it went the distance. And those fights meant everything. You knew who was fighting. You knew those fights. It goes right up through Ali to even Tyson. Like there was just something magical about boxing in the heyday of the 60s, 70s, and then early 80s.
Absolutely, man. I am a huge boxing fan. I've still kind of lost touch with some of these guys because I know Wilder and Fury and stuff, but like the lightweights and stuff. Like Floyd might have been the last guy that was like really like thoroughly entertaining. It's a different generation now than the way it used to be. But I still watch. It's like the same with baseball, man. I love it, but I was rather however people feel about him or not. I was a big Barry guy, a big Ken Griffey Jr. guy. Like I miss those days. You know what I mean? The young Albert Pujols days. Like it's just a different time in sports. I feel like a lot of things has changed in general, but change is inevitable, and there's nothing wrong with it.
No, it's the evolution. I think now when it comes to sports, it's with the exception of the NBA. I'll put the NBA to the side when it comes to this conversation. But usually it's more about the team than a superstar athlete. Like, and the NBA, I think, really more focuses on the athletes themselves. But it feels like with every other sport, it's more about the team than it is about the actual athletes on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. And that leads to my next question here is when it comes to what you do in broadcasting, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to, communicate with other people at an elite level, for my people who want to get into this field, what is the main advice that you give them when they ask you, or if anything that they might not expect getting into broadcasting? What is stuff you would give somebody?
Well, you have to work. You have to be able, nothing's going to be handed to you. You have to, like, I have a sign above my desk that says, be so good they can't ignore you. Like, that's the best advice I can give to any, just like when it comes to the show that I do, Busted Open, not everybody believed in me or the show. They didn't believe in me as a broadcaster. They didn't believe in the show, that a pro wrestling show would work. But be so good that they can't ignore you. Don't take shortcuts. Don't take days off. Just be the best that you could possibly be. And be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. Like, if you're truly talented and you can truly do this, then you don't need to change. So be who you are, but show off how good you are. And like, again, the one thing that you could take from this and always remember and always listen to is be so good they can't ignore you. Like, anytime, like right now, you being on with you, like I'm on with you. So I'm going to do the best that I could do for you. You're taking the time to put me on your show. You've extended me the invitation, which I appreciate. So I'm going to come on the air and I'm going to do the best that I can in the time that you allow me to be on. That's what you have to that more than anything, that's the most important thing that there is.
Amen, man. And it's the same thing that a lot of guys that I've spoken to say, yo, how can you do this? Or how do I do that? And I always tell them, man, it's just being able to be consistent. And a lot of times you're going to go through stretches where your consistency speaks for you more than anything else. It's like I always tell everything. It's kind of like the Woody and the Buzz Lightyear analogy. It's like Buzz Lightyear was in the first movie was the new toy. Everybody loved him. And then you get to the point as movie goes on, Buzz just becomes part of the family and he becomes somebody. He's not the new toy anymore. He just becomes a part of the family. And that's when consistency kicks in. And I always tell people fall for the attention and the limelight. It's like, man, you got to be consistent because your legacy is really all you have in this broadcasting thing. You have to be able to talk, be able to escalate your points, but also be able to sit back and know when it's time to go into the conversation, or know when it's time to sit back and let your guest just kind of do it. It takes a good reader of energy and a good reader of conversation too to be able to do it, because a lot of people that do this, rather athletes or people that come into our lane, realizes that it's not that easy as people think it is.
It's very, and you actually said like being the sixth man, like being a point guard, like that's kind of my job on this show. Like I'm not a Hall of Famer. I never wrestled. I don't know what it's like to main event WrestleMania or to win a championship, but the other host on this show do. So it's my job to kind of throw them the ball at the right time so that they can knock it out of the park. Like it's just like any successful sports franchise. Why are they successful? Because the coach puts the right person in the proper place to succeed. So, like not everybody could be the quarterback, but not everybody could be the right guard or the left guard or the center. Like you got to put your stars in the perfect position to succeed. And that's my job. Like you said, like, hey, this isn't easy. So a lot of athletes walk in, they think, oh, all I got to do is BS for 60 minutes. And well, it takes a lot more than that. You got to be prepared. You got to be prepared for everything. But it's also my job to make sure I set them up in the best way possible. So, but you're absolutely right. Like you got to be aware. You got to know. You got to be knowledgeable, and you got to be able to understand that anything can happen at any moment.
Absolutely, and reading the energy in the room. And one thing that I noticed, and I'm a definitely give you roses for this, and I see it every time you do your show. You've done live shows, especially watching the live shows that you've done, because it's one thing that I always say. I know when I do the podcast with Swerve, it's like I always read body language of the guests first. I always see, are they tense at first? Are they laid back? Are they cool? But then once they see the flow of the conversation, once I see, like I always tell myself, once I see their shoulders drop and they take a deep breath and they recognize where the interview is going, the best content comes out, because they recognize what kind of interview it is. They're not just fishing for something. It's more of just a conversation. That's one thing that you're great at, which I learned a lot from you, was just more like having a conversation than just an interview. And it's like, okay, maybe you didn't have this question written down, but you're going with the flow of the conversation. So you're going to ask them something else because they made a great point instead of just reading what you wrote down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And listen, it's always good to be prepared. And when I go into an interview, I always jot down like a few things that I want to make sure that I bring up. But if you're writing out questions, if you go to each and every one of those questions, then you're not doing your job as an interviewer. Because like you just said, it needs to be a conversation. So like you ask me a question, you don't know where that conversation is going to lead. But if you're listening, you're going to probably go in a completely different direction than you thought that interview was going to go in. So like you're 100% right. And that's like your understanding of that is key, because it should be conversational. It shouldn't be like I'm grilling you and this is an interview. It's more of a conversation. And that's why when I talk to a lot of people that I interview, I might have that question, that one difficult question I want to ask, but I'm not going to ask it right off the bat. I'm going to make that person feel comfortable. I'm going to, joke around with them, ask them some of their interests, get them comfortable. And once they're comfortable, then you can ask them a difficult question. And believe me, if you ask a difficult question early, you're not going to get the same answer if you get them comfortable and they feel comfortable with you, and then you'll probably get a more honest answer.
Amen, man. And that's something that I always, believe to getting into this, is being able to read energy, read people. And when I took that, and you didn't have to take a psychology class to understand it. You could just, be able to just have conversations with people and be around people and be sociable and you don't have to be the most extroverted person, but just be able to talk to people and read energy and see how they conversate. And then you can always have a great interview. Let me ask you this though. What is something in your life that you had to overcome on your journey here? What is something that you're willing to share, and something you've had to overcome in your journey to get where you're at now? Something that can motivate people, or something that you went through but you persevered through it.
Yeah, I took communications in college. Like radio was something I wanted to do, but as everybody knows, life kind of always takes you in a different direction. So, yes. When I got finished with school, I got into a completely different field. I got into banking. So I was a bank manager, and I was married, bank manager, had a home. And then I lost my house, I lost my wife. Like, I kind of hit rock bottom. And I didn't know what was next for me, or how I was going to be able to jump back on that horse and succeed, because I think I was at my lowest at that point. That happened, I want to say now, geez, it's probably about 23 years ago when that happened. But that's when you got to really be able to go to that dark place and see if you're able to take that next step. That's when you got to see for yourself if you have it in you to be successful, is when you're at your lowest, when you're at the most down in your life. And that's when I decided, you know what, my life's not going in the right direction. And that's when I bet on myself and got back into radio. I was like, that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do. I got away from it. Now is the opportunity to do that. Now is the opportunity. Since I have nothing, so I have nothing to lose. And that's when I kind of bet on myself and just dived in and was able to, like, really just say to myself, F it, it's now or never. And that moment happened to me, like I said, about 23 years ago.
That's an amazing thing, because 2 points quick points I want to make is, first, you were speaking about that dark place. And when I do my motivational videos and I talk to people, I always tell people that I'm more of a messenger instead of going into the leader type vibe, because you get a lot of motivational clips. You scroll your Instagram, everybody's doing that. And sometimes I don't think a lot of people are necessarily being real. They're just trying to motivate you. But I'm a firm believer that it's okay to sometimes tap into that dark place, as long as you don't treat anybody bad. That sometimes it's okay, because that's what motivates you. It's not the dark place of, hey, you know what I mean? It's being realistic, because we're yin and yang personalities as people. We have good days, we have bad days. Sometimes we scroll Instagram and you get to a point where you go through those times where you see what everybody else is doing, and it's like, man, I want to motivate you to do better. And then sometimes you go through moments where you don't care. And I just feel like that as a messenger and as a person, you just have to be realistic that it's okay to sometimes tap into that dark side, because that's what's going to push you. And it's not always going to be the I'm motivated. Sometimes you got to think about that thing you went through that pisses you off sometimes to keep you going. And that's okay, as long as you don't treat anybody bad. But for your own inner motivation, it's okay to sometimes tap into that side. Do you agree?
Yeah, because I think, like, the first reaction is probably always going to be anger. When something bad happens to you, you're going to be angry, and that's natural, and that's fine. You got to work through that. And there's going to be self-pity and self-doubt. That's natural. You got to work your way through that. But when I say go into that dark place, it's that place inside that's like, that it's not even so much about, and I agree with you, not showing that to other people, but like kicking yourself in the ass and saying, like it's looking in the mirror and saying to myself, I screwed up. The reason I'm in this position is not because of that person or that person, because if it's because of that person, well, I let that person do that to me, or I put myself in a position for that person to do that to me. It's you always got to look back at yourself. And the reason that I'm here, whether it's good or bad, is because of me. You got to point the finger at yourself before you point it at anybody else. And once you realize it's your fault, it's your mistake, well, then you can fix that mistake. Because if you're blaming somebody else, then you're never going to fix the mistake. Because you're never going to let that make somebody else look at things the same way that you look at things. So it's really looking at yourself in the mirror, saying, this is my fault, I put myself in this position, and then fixing it. Because you could only fix yourself. You can't fix anybody else. And I always believe in this too. You can't make anybody happy unless you're happy.
Amen.
So again, that's on you. It's taking responsibility for your own actions, whether it's good or bad. Mistakes are made, it's on me. It's my fault. I'm the only one that could correct it. If I'm unhappy and somebody else isn't making me happy, it's not their responsibility to make you happy. You have to make yourself happy first before you can make anybody else happy, or anybody else can make you happy. It all comes down to knowing your self-worth and understanding that you control your destiny, not somebody else.
Amen, man. And before I close here, the last.
And that's, by the way, I'm not to interrupt you. That's difficult to do.
Yes.
That's easier said than done. But I'm telling people, like, if you're able to do that and you're able to look at yourself, believe me, you'll be able to fix your problems. You really will.
Absolutely. And in our line of work, in any form of entertainment, or even in life, or working with other people and understanding your journey, if you can develop great business etiquette with emotional intelligence, you'll be able to do anything in this world, man, and be able to work with other people, understanding, like we said earlier, when to pass the ball and when to take the shot, being okay not being the guy to have to take the last shot all the time or be the guy leading the game in points. Know when you can just grab rebounds, play defense, and you could play your position. Or when your man got the hot hand, be the one giving him the Gatorade and the towel. That's okay. Yeah. And having the emotional intelligence to understand that, I'm going to have certain feelings about certain things. Everything is not always going to be great, but your emotional intelligence is how you react to it, processing it, understanding why you're feeling that way you feel, whether good or bad, in anything, any form of success or hardships, and processing it, sitting back, understand why you feel that way, whether good or bad, and then just make the right decision to move forward. And that's something, like you said, that if you can get that, we're probably going to be beyond our lifetime before it gets mastered, because human nature and the way we're wired is that certain things trigger us. But if we're able to handle it the right way, with the great emotional intelligence, with anything, business, success, life, any goals, dealing with other people, anything, you're able to, make it happen. And the reason why I went through it real quick is just because of hardships I went through, life stuff with my family and growing older and learning, how to communicate with people and, say how I feel and be respectful with it. But if you got to stand firm on the point, you stand firm on the point. And that is the one thing that I will say, that I've been watching you for years, man, in your line of work and what you do, is that you're one of the greatest at getting your point across and what you mean and what you say. And they always say, if you can communicate your points and without having to, without having to overdo it or just say things and say your point, Dave, you're the best at it, man. Honestly.
Thank you.
You are, man. And truthfully, I am, motivated by everything that you're doing. And, and once I found out these kindred spirits and going to college for communications and all these things that I've seen, I was like, man, I get it. I get him. I get it. And dude, I can't thank you enough, man, for the years of inspiration. And I always tell Swerve, man, there's two guys I always watch. There's Sway in the morning and there's you. And I can't thank you enough, man. Truly.
Well, seriously, that means a lot to me, because you're somebody I respect. You're somebody that I admire. You're somebody I always have my eye on. You're doing amazing things, and you're able to put yourself, like I said, in a position to succeed. And you're able to do that because you're very talented. You're talented on the microphone in more ways than one, and you're a people person. You know how to relate to people. You understand people. Man, that's one thing that, the one thing I hope we're learning, because, obviously the last few years hasn't been easy in our country. And we just need people to understand and accept. Understanding and acceptance goes a long way. Not everybody's like me, and that's a good thing, because how are you going to learn from people who are just like you? You're not going to learn anything, and listen, we all came from different places. We all didn't start right here. Our ties, everyone, their ties go out of this country. None of our family ties start here. They all start from someplace else. So we all have different backgrounds. And the soon as people realize and understand that and accept everybody for who they are, the better off we'll be. And that takes a lot of patience. And but I believe we could get there. I believe we could do it. It just we got to get away from the hate, and we got to get away from impatience, and we got to get away from everybody's got to look at something with the same point of view, because again, you don't grow and you don't learn if everybody has the same point of view.
The last thing that I want to bring up here, is I had a long conversation with Swerve the other day. And we were on the phone just building, as you normally do, get on the phone and just talk for a long time. And the one thing we was talking about is that, we've been working together for almost 6 years now. And we had a conversation. It was like, what's great about this is that, like I noticed about your comrades on your podcast, same thing, is that we were talking, we were like, what the great thing about it is that you could tell when people feel like they need each other for content or need each other for the relationship to work. And the great thing about it is that we choose to do it. It's not like you need each other. That's what's the great thing about it. And it's a natural chemistry that me and Swerve developed, because he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, but we come together and it's a big powerhouse. And you notice that the conversation and the feelings of brotherhood is organic, because we truly love each other and we also root for the best for each other. But it's also true that nothing about it is forced. And that's the one thing that I love about your content, whether Mickey, Tommy, Bully, is that your content with them, you could tell you guys have a great friendship and the respect is there. And nothing about it seems forced. It seems very organic. It seems like you guys come together. Oh, shout out to Mark too. And you guys come together and it is just a natural chemistry. It's like I just said about me and Swerve. You guys don't, quotation, need each other. But the great thing about it is that when you guys all come together, that family dynamic comes in. You know what I'm saying? And that makes the show even better.
Well, that's important in any relationship. Want should be stronger than need. If you need that person, then you're dependent on that person, and then that's not a true relationship. You're just in the relationship because you're getting something out of the relationship because of your dependency, and that's in any relationship. But when it's when it's based on want, I want you to be in my life. I want you to be on this journey with me. I don't need you to be, but I want you to be. That's so much stronger than need. Need to me is a negative. Want is a positive. And like, you're right. Like you and Swerve, you don't need each other. You guys got your own, like you said, you guys got your own thing, but you want to collaborate together. You want to do that. And that makes the journey so much more sweet, because it's an actual love between you two, not a need. You don't get love from need. You only get love from want.
Amen, man. I thank you once again, man, for coming on this platform, giving me your time. As I always tell people, and as I've told you, and I always will tell you, you're an inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you
for having me on your platform. Shout out to Thunder Rosa as well. Shout out to the whole team over there at Busted Open, and thank you for the motivation. Thank you for the conversation and keeping me motivated. This motivates me. I can always sharpen up my tool and being motivated each and every day, and to see someone of the platform that you have. Thank you so much, man. And you want to plug your social medias? Anything you want to promote?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on all social media platforms at David LaGreca 1, David LaGreca, the number 1. And listen to Busted Open Monday through Saturday, 9 to noon on Sirius XM. And you don't even need Sirius XM to listen to the show. We're also available as a podcast, Apple Podcast, everywhere you get your podcast, the Busted Open podcast. So, and then podswag.com and Pro Wrestling Tees for any merchandise.
You guys go get that merchandise right now. Go ahead and click that and support my big brother here. I thank you, man. We will reconvene very shortly. Thank you for coming on the Teasy's Table platform. personal one-on-one platform. Thank you for all the roses you give me, man. And I take it in and will continue to do better every day. So thank you, my brother. Thank you, man.
Thank you. And just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it great, man. You knock it out of the park. I appreciate you. I love you, man. And thank you so much for the time.
I love you too, man. Thank you so much, man. Keep killing it. I'm tuning into the show.
Thanks.
I always tune into the show. You take care, man. Give the family my best, brother.
You got it. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.